Some stories are too vast for a single life. Some pain is too deep for a single voice. Some journeys begin in beauty, descend into darkness, and rise again into light that no man could have imagined. This is one of them. Long ago, in the rolling hills of Canaan, there lived a young man named Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob, the first son of Rachel, the wife his father had loved most. He was a dreamer, a boy with a gentle heart, and eyes that saw further than the years he had lived. His father adored him, more than the others, more, perhaps, than was wise. The old man wove for him a coat of many colors, a robe that shimmered in the sun like fire and water mingled together. And in that robe, Joseph walked among his brothers, and a great unevenness began to grow. For love that is unevenly given can become a wound, and what was meant to bless this boy would first be used to break him. The brothers watched. They saw the favor that settled on Joseph like morning light. They saw the colorful robe, the gentle smile, the dreams he could not help but share. He told them of stars bowing down. He told them of sheaves of wheat that knelt before his own. And in the silent fields of their hearts, a quiet darkness began to grow. Jealousy is patient. It waits. It feeds on small offenses. It remembers every favor not given to itself. And one day, far from their father's eyes, it struck. They seized him. They stripped the robe from his back. They threw him into a dry pit. And they sat down to eat their bread while their brother wept beneath the earth. And when the merchants of Midian passed by, their camels laden with spices, bound for Egypt, the brothers struck a bargain. 20 pieces of silver, the price of a slave. The hands that should have protected him became the hands that bound him. The blood that should have defended him handed him over to strangers. He cried out. He pleaded. He called the names of those he had grown up beside. But the desert swallowed his voice, and the caravan moved on toward Egypt, toward a country whose language he could not speak, toward a future he could not yet see. The dream was dying, or so it seemed. In Egypt, he was sold again, this time, into the household of Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard. He was a slave now, a possession, a foreigner with no rights, and no name of his own. The robe of many colors had been replaced by the rough cloth of a servant, and yet, God had not forgotten him. In every task he was given, Joseph excelled. In every responsibility he was handed, he proved faithful. He worked as though the eyes of heaven were upon him, because he believed they were. Slowly, the young Hebrew rose, from the kitchens, to the storerooms, from the storerooms, to the courts, until at last, Potiphar himself looked at the foreigner before him, and saw a man who could be trusted with everything he owned. From the lowest position, the favor of God lifted him up. But faithfulness is tested most where no one is watching. And the higher Joseph rose, the more dangerous the testing became. Potiphar's wife saw the young man's strength. She saw his beauty, and she desired him. Day after day, she pressed him. Day after day, she sought him out in empty corridors. And day after day, he refused her. How could I do this great evil, he said, and sin against God? A lesser man would have given in. A weaker man would have rationalized. But Joseph fled from her hand. He ran from her presence. He left even his cloak behind, choosing the loss of dignity over the loss of his integrity. And for that integrity, he was punished. The woman lied. The master believed her. And Joseph, once again, was thrown into a pit. This time, a pit called prison. The dungeons of Egypt were a place of forgetting. Men were thrown into them and never spoken of again. The bread was hard, the light was thin, the years were long. There, in the dark, Joseph had every reason to curse the heavens. He had been faithful, and faithfulness had cost him everything. But even there, God was working. Even in that cell, even in that silence, even when no one remembered his name, heaven did not lose sight of him. 2 prisoners came to him with troubled dreams. The cupbearer, the baker, men who had served Pharaoh, and who had fallen from grace. They saw visions in their sleep, and they could not understand them. And the gift his brothers had once knocked, the gift his father had once treasured, awoke in him again. He spoke the meaning of their visions. He spoke it truly. The cupbearer would be restored, the baker would be lost, and Joseph asked only one thing: remember me. when it goes well with you. But the cupbearer forgot, as men so often forget, as the world so often forgets the ones who have done it good. And so Joseph waited 1 year, then another, forgotten, buried alive in the patience of God. 2 years passed, 2 years of silence, 2 years of stone walls and unanswered prayers. And then, far above him, Pharaoh dreamed 7 fat cows grazing by the river, and out of the river 7 thin cows that devoured them, 7 full heads of grain, golden in the wind, and out of the dust 7 withered heads that consumed them. The Pharaoh woke trembling. No wise man, no magician, no astrologer in all of Egypt could speak the meaning. And in that moment of royal helplessness, the prisoner was remembered. They sent for him, they washed him, they shaved his face, and they clothed him in fresh linen, and they brought him before the throne of Pharaoh. The interpretation, Joseph said, is not mine. God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. 7 years of plenty would come, 7 years of famine would follow. Egypt must prepare, Egypt must store, the land must be governed by a wise hand, one that could see beyond the harvest of the present year, into the hunger of the years ahead. And in the eyes of Pharaoh, Joseph saw what no man could have predicted: recognition, trust, wonder. The signet ring of the kingdom slipped onto his finger. A robe of fine linen was placed upon his shoulders. A chariot was prepared for him, and the people cried out before him in the streets of Egypt. In a single day, the prisoner became a prince. Joseph rose to govern all of Egypt. The fields were filled, the storehouses overflowed, granaries swelled with grain. And when the famine came, exactly as God had said it would, Egypt alone had bread. Nations came to her gates. The hungry of the earth bowed before this stranger from a foreign land. And among them came his brothers. They did not recognize him. The boy they had sold was now a man crowned in linen and gold. He spoke their language through a translator. He kept his face like stone. They knelt before him, exactly as the dreams of his youth had foretold. And he held, in his hand, the lives of every man who had betrayed him. He could have destroyed them with a single word. He had every right, every reason, every memory of the pit, the chains, the desert, the prison. Every wound of every year stood between him and forgiveness. But Joseph wept. He wept in a private chamber, where they could not see him. He wept for the years that had been taken. He wept for the father who still mourned him as dead. He wept because grace is never small. And then Joseph forgave. I am Joseph, your brother, the one you sold into Egypt. Do not be grieved or angry with yourselves, for God sent me before you to preserve life. What they meant for evil, God had meant for good. The pit, the silver, the slavery, the lies, the prison. Every step that had felt like ruin had been a step in a road that only heaven could have drawn. And then, at last, Jacob came. The old man whose grief had never healed. The father who had torn his clothes when they brought him the bloodied robe. The man who had said, in his sorrow, I will go down to the grave mourning my son. He was carried into Egypt, and there, in the dust of a land that was not his own, he found his boy alive. He embraced him. He wept upon his neck, and the years that had been stolen from them returned in a single moment. My son, I never thought I would see your face again. Father, I have waited so long for this moment. The pit was never the end. The prison was not the end. The betrayal was not the end. Because sometimes, what breaks you becomes the very testimony of how God remade you. The pain you cannot understand is being woven into a deliverance you cannot yet see. The hardest season of your life is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a chapter you have not yet learned to read. And maybe, what feels like the pit is really the path. What feels like the end is really the quiet before the dream. Because the story you are surviving today is the story that will save others tomorrow.